Her in-laws mocked her with a torn piece of paper, calling it her inheritance. They had no idea it would lead her to a hidden vineyard worth millions. The meeting should have been about support. Just hours after laying her husband to rest, Clara Dawson sat in the parlor of the old family home. Heavy curtains shut out the afternoon sun, and the air was thick with silence. Her 2-year-old daughter Sophie shifted uneasily on her lap, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. But comfort never came. Instead, her brother-in-law Thomas Dawson leaned forward in his polished suit, eyes cold. With a smirk, he pulled a jagged scrap of paper from his pocket and tossed it across the table. "There's your share, Clara. A worthless fragment of the will. Be grateful we spared you even that." Gasps echoed around the room. Evelyn, Thomas's wife, clicked her pearls together as she tilted her chin with triumph. And Janet, Clara's sister-in-law, let out a sharp laugh that cut through their hush. "Hope you enjoy the gutter, Clara. That's where scraps like you belong." Clara's hand trembled as she picked up the paper. Its edges were torn, the ink faded, but she clutched it as though it were lifeline. Sophie's small voice wavered. "Mommy, is that all we got?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Around her, whispers swirled like wildfire. "She can't last without Richard. She'll be begging before winter. She's finished." But Clara lifted her chin, refusing to let them see her collapse. With quiet strength, she rose, holding Sophie close. The torn paper dug into her palm as she left the parlor. She didn't know it yet, but the very scrap they mocked would one day be the key to a triumph so stunning, the Dawsons would be brought to their knees. Before we continue this story, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you who have been following and supporting this channel. Your encouragement keeps these stories alive. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Please give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment to share how you feel about the story so far, and share it with friends and family. Now, let's get back to the drama. The will reading should have been her safeguard. Clara Dawson sat on the edge of a leather chair in the lawyer's dimly lit office, Sophie nestled against her side, thumb pressed to her lips for comfort. Clara's heart thudded as the lawyer unfolded the last envelope Richard had left behind. For a moment, hope surged. Her husband had always been careful, thoughtful. Surely, he had secured something for her and their child. The lawyer cleared his throat, his tone heavy with unease. "To my wife, Clara, I leave," he hesitated, eyes flicking over the paper. "The residence on Maple Hill. The vineyard at Willow Creek." And, his voice trailed as his brow creased, a final instruction. He slid a small, tattered scrap of paper across the desk. Clara reached for it, relief softening her shoulders. A home. A vineyard. A future. But before she could speak, Thomas Dawson's voice lashed out. "Impossible. That property belongs to the family. She has no right." Evelyn leaned forward, her pearls brushing the desk as she spoke. "Don't fool yourself, Clara. The house, the land, those were Richard's by name only. They belong to us now. The only thing you have," she tapped the fragile scrap with a manicured nail, "is this. Whatever nonsense it points to." A cruel laugh escaped Janet, echoing in the wood-paneled room. "Maybe an empty shed. Maybe nothing at all. Take it and be thankful." The lawyer opened his mouth to object, but Thomas cut him off with a raised hand. "She has no money for court. She has no fight left. She can walk out with the scrap, or with nothing." Clara's throat tightened. Sophie clung harder, her small voice breaking through the tension. "Mommy, is that really all we got?" Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. With steady fingers, she folded the scrap and slipped it into her pocket. She stood without a word, Sophie balanced against her hip. Behind her, laughter followed, low, bitter, victorious. But as the drizzle met her face outside, Clara tightened her grip on the scrap. They thought they had ridiculed her. They thought they had won. None of them knew the faded words inked on that paper would one day unravel their pride and build her salvation. The Dawsons' laughter still clung to the walls long after they swept out of the office, their perfumes and sharp words hanging in the stale air. Clara Dawson remained seated at the polished oak table, Sophie perched quietly on her lap, clutching her mother's blouse with tiny fists. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, removing his glasses. "Mrs. Dawson. I'm sorry. This wasn't how today was meant to go." Clara forced a nod, though her throat burned. Her fingers unfolded the torn scrap with trembling care. The paper was yellowed, edges frayed as if it had been ripped from a larger sheet. The words were faint, ink blurred with age, but one phrase caught her eye. Willow Creek, boundaries preserved. Her chest tightened. Willow Creek. The vineyard Richard had poured himself into before his family pushed him aside. Sophie tugged at her sleeve, her little voice breaking the silence. "Mommy, what does it mean?" Clara brushed her daughter's hair back with shaking hands. "I don't know yet, sweetheart. But your father wouldn't leave us nothing. He was too careful for that." She folded the scrap and pressed it to her palm, the jagged edges digging into her skin. For the first time since the burial, a flicker of something stirred beneath her grief, not hope exactly, but a question. Why had Richard hidden this? Why had he trusted her with it, knowing his family's greed? Outside, the drizzle painted the windows, blurring the city beyond. Clara rose slowly, balancing Sophie against her hip. The Dawsons believed they had mocked her into silence. But as she slipped the scrap into her coat pocket, Clara knew one thing: this was not the end. It was the beginning of a secret Richard had left only for her to uncover. 2 days later, Clara Dawson found herself back in the same office, Sophie perched on the chair beside her, swinging her little legs. The room smelled faintly of old books and rain-damp wood. Clara clutched her handbag tightly, the torn scrap folded inside like a secret too heavy to ignore. The lawyer, Mr. Halvorson, adjusted his spectacles, studying her with quiet concern. "You've been through enough, Mrs. Dawson. Why come back so soon?" Clara drew the paper out slowly and set it on his desk. "Because this can't be all. Richard wouldn't leave me with nothing. He must have meant for me to find something more." Halvorson leaned forward, his fingers brushing the jagged edge. His brows knit together as he read the faint words again. Willow Creek, boundaries preserved. Sophie tilted her head, watching. "Is it treasure, Mommy?" Clara gave her daughter a faint smile, though her chest ached. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe something your father wanted us to have." Halvorson sat back, voice measured. "I knew your husband well enough to say this," he was deliberate. Every word had purpose. "If he left you this, it isn't junk. It's a direction." Clara's pulse quickened. "Then why tear it from the rest?" The lawyer's eyes softened. "Because he didn't trust his family. Perhaps he knew only you would look closely enough to see its worth." Clara folded the scrap again, her hands steadying. For the first time since Richard's death, her grief shifted into resolve. She glanced at Sophie, whose small fingers reached for hers. "They think I'm finished," Clara whispered, slipping the scrap back into her bag. "But Richard left me more than they'll ever understand. And I'm going to find it." Outside, the drizzle had stopped, sunlight breaking faintly through the clouds. Clara stepped out of the office with Sophie's hand in hers, her heart no longer hollow. The Dawsons had mocked her with a scrap of paper, but soon, she would learn it was a map to her redemption. The words on the torn scrap echoed in her mind: Willow Creek, boundaries preserved. With Sophie strapped in the back seat, Clara drove the borrowed sedan down a winding country road, her heart pounding harder with every mile. The Dawsons had laughed at her, dismissed her as nothing. But the paper in her pocket weighed like iron, whispering that Richard had left her something they could never steal. The road ended at a rusted gate. A faded sign clung to it, Willow Creek Vineyard. The vines beyond were tangled and wild, stretching in every direction like forgotten soldiers. To anyone else, it looked abandoned, worthless. Sophie pressed her small hand to the window. "It's pretty, Mommy." Clara's throat tightened. She stepped out, the autumn wind sharp against her face. The soil crunched under her shoes as she pushed through the creaking gate. Her husband's voice seemed to rise with the wind. "One day, this land will matter. Don't let them take it from you." She walked between rows of gnarled vines, Sophie toddling at her side, clutching the stuffed rabbit she never let go of. The air was heavy with earth, and though the vineyard looked broken, Clara noticed something. Clusters of grapes still clung to the branches, stubborn and sweet. Her breath caught. Richard hadn't left her a scrap. He had left her a key. The crunch of gravel snapped her from her thoughts. A sleek car rolled up behind her, and out stepped Thomas Dawson with his wife Evelyn at his side. His smirk was unmistakable. "Still chasing ghosts, Clara? Look around. This land is dead. Worthless." Evelyn laughed, her voice sharp. "You think a widow with a toddler can do anything with this place? Sell the paper, Clara. That's all it's good for." Clara stood tall, Sophie clinging to her skirt. Her fingers tightened around the scrap in her pocket. "No," she said softly but firmly. "This isn't worthless. Richard meant for me to have it. And I won't let you take it." Thomas's smirk faltered for just a second before he turned back to his car. "You'll regret wasting your time here." As their laughter faded into the distance, Clara turned back to the rows of vines. The land was tired, but not dead. She pressed her hand to Sophie's back and whispered, "This is where we start over." For the first time since the burial, her chest filled not with grief, but with fire. Days after visiting Willow Creek, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Richard had left her more than weeds and broken fences. The torn scrap of paper whispered to her every night, "Willow Creek, boundaries preserved." With Sophie dozing in her arms, she returned again, this time walking the land carefully, her shoes sinking into the dark, damp soil. Something about the ground shimmered faintly in the light. A week later, she brought in a land surveyor. The man crouched, digging into the earth with practiced hands. When he looked up, his expression was stunned. "Mrs. Dawson, do you know what you're standing on?" Clara shook her head, heart racing. "These fields, they are hiding rough diamonds. Rare ones. This land isn't worthless, it's worth more than your in-laws' entire empire." Clara's breath caught in her throat. Her husband hadn't left her broken. He had hidden their future where greedy hands would never think to look. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, Sophie asleep beside her, the torn scrap spread in front of her. She whispered, tears streaking her face. "You knew, Richard. You knew they'd mock me. But you left me something that would outlive them all." The weeks turned into months. Clara moved quietly, working with trusted buyers who purchased the stones in secrecy. She sold only what she needed, funneling the money into building a new life. Bills vanished. Sophie wore new shoes. Food filled their table. And step by step, Clara grew stronger. By the time Sophie turned 4, Clara had invested enough to transform Willow Creek into more than a vineyard. She built a company, Sophie's Legacy, a tribute to her daughter and the love Richard had left hidden in the earth. Word spread quickly. Newspapers whispered, "Widow discovers hidden diamonds beneath vineyard fields." Investors came knocking. Her fortune grew while the Dawsons' empire collapsed under debt and greed. One autumn afternoon, Thomas and Evelyn appeared at her office door. Their faces were pale, their pride shattered. "Clara, we've lost everything," Thomas murmured. "We need help. Just for a while. Please." Clara looked at Sophie, now old enough to remember. Her voice was calm, unshaken. "Do you remember the night you mocked me? When you threw a torn scrap in my hand and called it worthless?" Evelyn's eyes brimmed with shame. Thomas lowered his head. Clara folded her arms. "Richard left me a gift you could never touch. And I won't waste it on those who tried to break me." The door closed behind them, their footsteps fading into silence. Inside, the torn scrap hung framed above her desk. To outsiders, it was a worthless shred of paper. But to Clara, it was proof that even the smallest remnant could hold a legacy, and that sometimes, the earth itself hides treasure for those patient enough to believe. She glanced at Sophie and whispered softly, "We're free now." If you love this story and would want to listen to the next episode, please comment next in the comment section, and hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to get notified when the next video drops. Thank you.